hope this is working. Still giving me a whole bunch of red and orange. Internet's not very good signs, but the router is reset. We are on to part 2 of today's very short stream. Sorry about that. I've got a whopping 13 of you in here. Hopefully everyone else can make it back. That was... all right. There we go. Okay. All right. Beats by the wood. Houston, what would happen if Earth stopped spinning along its axis for 2 seconds? We would all die. We would all slam into each other at 500 miles an hour, 1,000 miles an hour, depending on where on the Earth's surface we are. You have to imagine angular momentum, right? So the Earth's rotating at its equator at about 1,000 miles an hour. If you stopped that rotation, everyone else and all the trees and animals and water and everything else keeps going 1,000 miles an hour for those 2 seconds. And we're going to be smacking into walls, piling into each other on mountainsides, avalanches, just nightmares would happen if the Earth stopped for 2 seconds. This angular momentum question is something when I took my modern mechanics course in my undergraduate. Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen had just managed to teleport an electron or something, and teleportation was everyone's talking, oh, teleportation, and my professor at the time, he was big into pretty much Star Trek. And he's like, teleportation is going to be a thing of the future. And I just couldn't see the reality in it. Because, imagine you scan the entire body and you put it into a computer and you regenerate it on the other side. In order to maintain our memories and who we are, you have to maintain all of the electrical impulses. You have to maintain the energy. And if you maintain energy, you have to maintain all energy. You can't just selectively pick energy here and there, which means you have to maintain inertia and momentum and things like that. So let's say you are in Seattle, where you're rotating at about 600 miles an hour at our angle, and you want to beam to the equator. We're rotating at 1,000 miles an hour. You're going to pop out of that machine at 400 miles an hour and just be a red mist against the wall. If you are teleporting between the Starship Enterprise and the surface below, and the Starship Enterprise is orbiting at 17,000 miles an hour, you are going to just come out of that machine at 17,000 miles an hour like a friggin' spray gun and just absolutely hose down the walls with your being. So I think teleportation of organic living creatures probably won't be something of the future because of, as you asked that question, what if you stopped spinning the Earth on its axis for 2 seconds? We'd all become red mist, man. That'll be it. Every living thing on Earth, except for maybe some tardigrades and cockroaches, will be dead. All right. Bird Bear, GME record low volume for third straight day today. Yes, so much is being funneled through dark pools at the moment that the volumes look teeny tiny. The SEC is going to have to put a stop to all this dark pool trading because they're doubling down on shorting. They're doubling down on dark pools. And it's manipulating the price. So the dark pool stuff has to go. And again, my internet is so garbage right now. I'm so sorry. I hope the audio is coming through. Lugs just sent me a super chat saying for your internet, for faster internet service, your 56K modem is not cutting any longer. Dude, I pay Comcast a fortune for good internet, and this is what I get from them. It is awful. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's a good thing that today's show is kind of going to be a short one because I think it's going to be a nightmare of a show. Slacker75, have you ever thought about going on the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Yeah, man. My friend David won $500,000 on the Regis Philbin version back in the day. I tried to do the phone one, and I just never got selected. And I wasn't one of those picked for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when Regis Philbin was still hosting it. I never tried since then, but I would love. I would love to do that. I've tried for Jeopardy several times. I've passed the test at least 3 times, but didn't make the selection. So I did this TV pilot back at Thanksgiving. This was for a kids show for History Channel, and basically do what I'm doing right now, which is come on. Buzzy Cohen, who's Jeopardy grand champion, he was the host, and there's 3 little kids, 3 like little 7-year-olds. It's kind of a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Not sorry. It's a kids say the darndest things type show. And Buzzy asked me a question about science or history, and I explain it as best I can, and then the kids have to describe what I just explained to them back to Buzzy, and it's hilarious. So I was on that show with Buzzy and another Jeopardy champion, and they're like, dude, you could totally be on Jeopardy. I'm like, I know. I keep passing the test, and I keep not getting selected. So I don't know what the magic is to be someone chosen, like granted to go on to Jeopardy. I want to so bad. Luke V, important question. Should I order Popeyes, Chick-fil-A, or KFC for dinner? Popeyes, man. All the way. Always Popeyes. If you have the chance. That's my answer. Not financial advice. Okay. Looking for the questions. Tom Zock E. Hello, Houston. Greetings from Germany. I have a question. Is it still worth it to jump into Metamaterials? I think so, personally. I'm still sitting on my shares, waiting for that QSIP change to result in a whole bunch of recalls of shares. The T35 date is coming in a couple of weeks, and I think all those shorts are going to be forced to buy back. And that will result in the price going up. They may have been doing some covering while the price is down below $4, but a lot of them won't cover until they're forced to. They'll just hope to push that stuff off and forever. Try lowering the bit rate of the video. Stream settings. Where would be the bit rate of the video? I don't know how to do that. CPU. I'm looking. It's just that I think my internet is just so in flux right now. I have no ability to guarantee what's going to be. Duration. Let's see here. Scenes, filters, properties. Buffering, auto detect, flip vertically, computer audio. Man, all right. I don't see that there. I think because I'm watching my on my OBS, the internet is going from like 5 kilobits to a megabit to 400 kilobits to 1,000 to 1,200 kilobits. It's just bouncing around, and it's completely there's no rhyme or reasons to it. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry, folks. Sometimes you can't win when Comcast decides to mess with your internet. Rostock asks, hey Houston, why are 19 million houses going up for foreclosure on 8781? Is it due to interest rates going up or irresponsible people just not paying their mortgages? It's people not paying their mortgages, but they're not paying their mortgages because they ran into financial trouble during the pandemic. I was an early advocate for what Italy did, when Italy shut down, they paused all rents and paused all mortgages, and they just said, hey, we're just going to pause everything, and when this is over, we'll start right back up again when the economy opens. We should have done that in the United States, because right now what that's doing is putting people's housing security, millions and millions of people's housing security at risk. We've got a bunch of landlords who haven't gotten rent in a long time. We've got a bunch of property owners who haven't been able to pay their mortgages, and there was a moratorium as to when you could foreclose and when you could evict foreclose homeowners and evict renters. And that moratorium is up on August 1st. And so this means the courts are going to get flooded with a whole bunch of eviction notices and probably foreclosure notices as well. Sheriffs can be called like crazy to evict people from their homes. And we could see the potential for quite a housing crisis to begin as a result of that, and a whole bunch of homes flooding the market and flooding auctions being sold in the coming months if these mortgages aren't caught up on and back rent isn't paid. So that's one of those little precarious precipices that the economy is sitting on right now. During 2008, it was only like 2.5 or 3 million homes that got foreclosed on, and right now 1 in 3 renters are behind on rent in the United States. That's crazy. That's not sustainable for any economy. The commercial real estate market is going to absolutely collapse. We've got all these giant glass towers and industrial parks and business parks all over the place that are probably going to go empty and their leases not renewed because they're discovering that their workers can work from home, be just as productive, and be happier, and spend less money on commuting and childcare and things like that. So I think the movement of working in an office is going to be on a downturn, at least for a while. I'm not sure if it will recover. Some people do flourish in an office environment, but a lot of people are discovering that they can work from anywhere in the world, especially if they have a white collar job. And I have friends that have moved like to Spain and are working an online job here in Seattle, and they just they work in the evenings. They spend all their day at the beach, and then at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they log into their computers and work with all their coworkers that are back here in Seattle. So there are people that are figuring out ways to do what they want to do. I mean, if you are getting paid for the living expenses of the Seattle area, you're getting $6,000-$7,000 a month to work a professional job in Seattle, but you're doing it in Spain, where the cost of living is about $1,500 a month. You can live like a god in a beautiful region with cool people, and it's think about how much savings you can make, how much you can invest in, how comfortable you can live your life. So there's a lot of people that are going towards that, and I think that's going to spell doom for the commercial real estate market, as well as the real estate market in general. I mean, you can, if during the pandemic you can skip out on your rent for a year and save up and buy yourself an RV and just take off and do the whole van life thing. I'm sure people are doing that too. Yeah. All right. KJS, hey, hello, dude. I didn't know you were doing a master's in history. I just finished my bachelor's degree in history myself. It's about the Red Cross operations during the Italian-Ethiopian War. Excellent. Congratulations. Yeah, rad. I'm very slowly, like a class a term, doing a master's degree in history right now. I'm learning so much. The great thing about taking history courses is, like, I don't necessarily know what to look for. I don't know what to study, what to research, and I just sit there and my teacher's like, "Hey, read this thing," and I go, "I never knew that existed. Whoa, my mind is blown." It's fantastic. I love being like directed to new information I didn't even know was out there. And technically, yeah, you can go to the library and read everything and learn it all yourself, but there's something about having somebody who's an expert and super interested in a particular field just kind of leading you to what made them so fascinated that I love. So yeah, I'm just like a perpetual student. So I love taking classes. I do. I love learning new things. It's my favorite thing in the world. Maybe that and internet arguing are my two favorite things in the world. But congratulations, KJS. Hope you go on and do awesome things with that history degree. All right. RV says on July 30th, the Fed Reserve will publicly release a total derivative exposure numbers for all domestic and foreign banks and their lending clients. Will this give us insight into how big the MOAS could be? Yeah, the Fin Watchdog came out with that DD, pointing that out, and then Charlie's Vids came up with a video saying, it's not that big a deal. It happens all the time. But from what I'm reading, the scale at which it's going to happen on the 30th is bigger than previous versions, where the books could kind of be cooked a little bit before they showed them to the Federal Reserve. But I guess we'll see on the 30th if Fin Watchdog or Charlie's Vids are right about that. The way the law is written is the Federal Reserve literally has to publicly show everyone what those exposures are. These are our obligations, these are our liabilities, these are our assets, and so on. And I'm very curious to see what those numbers show, because it's going to be banks. So there won't be financial institutions like market makers or hedge funds, but those banks lend margin to those market makers and hedge funds and other groups. And so that you might see some sort of idea of what the liabilities are and what the assets are under management for those groups. So you may see those total exposures. I hope it's so. All right. Okay. Mr. Joe Nada, rumor is dark pool volume on AMC hit 91% around noon. Holy crap. Dang. That's the rumor at this point. That's hearsay. I have no idea, but it seems to be pumping up each day. I think the market makers like Citadel are purposely routing more and more trades if they can through these dark pools, specifically to affect price. So I think that's where we are. Dang, that's yep. Okay. What does NFA mean? It means not financial advice, Nil. I'm not a financial advisor. That's what all us we YouTube guys that talk about the markets and things is that we can't specifically tell you that we are financial advisors and give you direct advice that you should follow. You have to do your own research. I am just somebody who regurgitates things I read, and that's where I am. I love reading. I love disseminating information, and yeah. But I'm not a financial advisor. I cannot make direct recommendations for you. I can tell you what I would do in a situation, and then it's up to you to finish your research and to make your bets, basically. Lockdown haircut. Do you think there's any potential in thorium molten salt reactors? Yeah, I was reading about those a couple months ago. They work in a similar way as regular nuclear reactors. But they use thorium and salts, which are basically any sodium compounds. And they don't heat up as hot as like a uranium reactor would. They're sort of like how we should do recycled nuclear waste reactors that don't generate as much heat as a regular reactor because it's depleted. And but we can still get some energy out of it. And it's a great way to pull off radioactive material before we send it away to a waste facility. The thorium reactors, I think, have only been worked in labs and they haven't been set up in a large scale, but I'm all for it. Do it. Sheep, duck, and cow. When we see a volume count in a broker, does this represent both legitimate and dark pool action, real time or otherwise? Oh. Well, when you see the volume count, like if you log into your Fidelity or your Robinhood or whatever, and it shows like volume is 1.5 million shares, that's going to be the volume of shares that moved through the legit market, through the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, what have you. Later on that day, when dark pools are reported, they'll say, oh, we moved 20 million shares, and you can see like, oh, dark pool is so much more than the legit market at this point. So when you look at your brokerage account, that volume that's represented is right now the few shares that actually pass through the stock exchange. It is basically a lie because right now the majority of shares are not passing through the stock exchange. The New York Stock Exchange is trying to change their rules to entice people from the dark pools into their exchange again by lowering the fees of doing trades. It doesn't look like it's worked because we're seeing dark pool go up, 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 up. It may take the federal government stepping in and saying you cannot move these shares through dark pool anymore. It must go through an exchange so that people can see what the actual price is, and it can price action can represent that. I hope the SEC actually does something like that, because all this movement through dark pools is price manipulation. We can see it on the daily. Okay. All right. Martin O'Regan, what's your thoughts on the battle between Egyptologists versus geologists over the real age of the Sphinx? Geologists say 12,000 years due to water erosion at the base. Egyptologists say 5,000 years. I think the Egyptologists are probably more correct. The geologists are counting water erosion based on today's rainfall numbers. When 5,000 years ago, we were in a different part of the interglacial period, where there was probably more rainfall in the Saharan desert at the time. So more water erosion happened then than now. So if you look at water erosion now versus 5,000 years ago, there's probably a vast difference between how much rainfall there was, thus a higher rate of erosion from that rainfall. So I'm leaning towards the Egyptologists on this one than the geologists themselves, because I don't think the geologists are looking at, the curve of rainfall patterns happening in the Saharan desert over that time. Luke says, I saw news that Metamaterials was a bad investment, so I doubled my position. Someone posted to Twitter yesterday a list of Jim Cramer's buy these stocks as recommendations, and there was like 100 of them that had all lost 50% or more of their value. Basically, if Jim Cramer recommends a stock, buy a put against it, is what I learned from that lesson. I think he only has like 2% returns on the entire year so far, and the stocks that he's trashed have like 140% returns. Okay. Jeremy Gavsick, thoughts about Dante's Peak? That was a movie that came out in '97 with Pierce Brosnan. There was another movie called Volcano that was about the same time. Well, Hollywood oftentimes have two competing movies that have the same premise. One of them's usually really stupid, and one of them's a lot better. Like Armageddon, stupid. Deep Impact, much better. Volcano with Anne Heche, stupid. Dante's Peak with Pierce Brosnan, very good. So Dante's Peak is about a fictitious Northwest Cascade volcano, and that volcano, is imminent threat to erupt, and Pierce Brosnan plays a scientist warning everybody, and no one listens. And then there's, the Harry Truman type character who refuses to leave, and of course dies in the volcanic ash. Harry Truman, not the president Harry Truman, but there's a guy named Harry Truman who owned a lodge on Spirit Lake at Mount St. Helens, who was like, this mountain will never kill me. And then he was buried under 1,200 feet of ash during the giant eruption. So the science is pretty solid. There can be acidic lakes around volcanoes, but they don't quite acidify as quickly as led to believe in that movie. If you get a whole bunch of carbonic acid and things in the lakes. But for the most part, they did a pretty good job with the tech they had at the time for doing the eruptions. I give Dante's Peak a thumbs up. You should also watch Super Volcano that came out like 15 years ago for Discovery Channel. That one was pretty rad too. They had the world premiere at my college, and they had all these scientists from around the world come and do a talk about Super Volcano. That was pretty fun. I got a t-shirt that's like way too small for me from that. Swaggy D. Hey Houston, thanks for the George Gammon plug. He's got a lot of great info. I have a question in the chat, kind of long, if you could answer for me. Well, heck, I gotta find Swaggy D's question here. Where is it? Where is it? If I can see it. Swaggy D, Swaggy D, Swaggy D, Swaggy D. George Gammon's take on the GME events seemed to have to do with out-of-the-money call options, forcing market makers to hedge by buying the underlying shares, sending the price, squeezing shorts. Yeah, it's the gamma squeeze. So, the a lot of people bought a whole bunch of options that are way out of the money for GameStop, especially when it was like trading for $2 a share and stuff. They bought call options that were like $45, $100, $180, and the options houses sold these options for pennies, thinking this stock will never reach that. It's free money. So they sold hundreds of thousands of these options that were 9 months, 10 months, year out, 2 years out, and so on. And when the stock got squeezed, all of a sudden these option guys are like, oh my God, I've got to buy shares to cover these positions. And that's the gamma squeeze. That's when the options houses have to go out and start buying the stock like crazy, and it drives up the price, which causes more options to go in the money, which drives up the price, which causes more options to go in the money. And that's kind of the cascade that GameStop had from January on, is that these option houses sold all these naked contracts, and then all of a sudden had to start covering them for their position. I think right now what's happening is those option houses are just letting everything go failure to deliver, because they don't have the money to close those positions. So they're doing these debt swaps and resetting the FTDs on them that way. And that's kind of where we are. We're in this like limbo where everyone's passing the buck to somebody else. Okay. All right. And then Swaggy D goes on. But eventually they will make it too expensive to buy those options, essentially ending the game and causing the price to crash again. He also seems to think this entire thing will end badly for retail investors who buy and hold, and only a small few will end up making money, comparing it to a game of musical chairs. That's where I think he's a bit wrong at the moment, mainly because no one's tried closing their positions. What's happening is the hedge funds sell naked stocks, and those naked stocks go into the accounts of a whole bunch of people who didn't know they were buying naked stocks. And then the hedge funds are supposed to close that position, but instead what they do is they buy more options. And they buy a whole bunch of options and pass the buck onto the options houses. And the option houses are selling those options without having the shares. So the option houses have to go out and buy more shares. It causes the price go up, which makes the hedge funds short even more. And it's just this ongoing cycle. And what's happening is more and more and more and more and more naked shares are being created, and no one's technically closing any of their positions. Because the hedge funds are selling naked, the option houses are buying naked. So, we're in this like Ouroboros cycle. It's a snake eating its tail, basically. So I think Gammon's a bit wrong on that, because if the hedge funds weren't hemorrhaging cash as much as they are, and they didn't have such huge margins, then it's possible we could be left holding the bag on this. But all they've done for 8 months now is dig a hole even deeper and lose even more money. So, that's where we are. Okay. I think it looks like my internet stabilized. I'm at like 3,000 kilobits. Woo! Awesome. Okay, so that's great. Sorry about the internet problems, folks. Yeah. Lee Meadows asks, hey Houston, what do you think the chances are of a stock split on GME, and what will it mean for us in the MOAS? Well, if you do a stock split, you change the QSIP number on the stock, which can force recalls of the stock and force buying by short positions. I don't know if GameStop are going to split. There's lots of people saying that they will because of that picture of Ryan Cohen with the chopsticks in his nose, because you have to split chopsticks. people are better at interpreting those things than I am. I am absolutely terrible at interpreting his cryptic messages. I am curious as if they will. It might be very likely that GameStop just throws everything at this. That they do stock splits, they do the crypto dividend, they do mergers, they do all these things, and it just creates this giant storm of responsibility for all these short hedge funds that go, oh my God, like if one of those things can force them to buy, all of these things should definitely force them to buy. I would like to see, I'd like to see some diabolical madness come out of this from them, but they're insiders. So they can't actually tell us directly what they're thinking. Otherwise, that's considered manipulation. So that has to be done in due time. Okay. Nil21981. People are lowballing the AMC squeeze. Do you think it will hit over 10,000? I think people in the peak will get 5 figures for AMC. I don't think everyone will get it because a lot of people will definitely sell when they make enough money. They're out. If you got 1,000 shares and the price gets to $1,000, you're a millionaire, right? So I know a lot of people who have 1,000 shares of AMC because they bought it like $1.87, and being a millionaire on this is like, you did it, good job, congratulations, you made it. I'm not there yet. I'm not even close to that millionaire range off of these stocks. So I'm counting on the price action to pop a lot higher than what some people will probably sell for. Jesus G. Metamaterials shares or options? Yes. I have shares, and I also bought some lotto ticket options for off in the future, like $18 options for a year from now, because they can fire if this stock squeezes the next few weeks, those options will be worth quite a bit of money several weeks from now. So I took that gamble. I made some lotto tickets that way, and we'll see, right? I mean, that's all we can do is we take our information, we try to make an informed bet on something, and see if it turns out to work. And I'm hoping it does. I usually sell that stuff way too early. I like when I have options, like, hey, I made some money off the options, sell, and then 2 days later it's worth like 10 times what it was. I always pick a bad spot to resell my options. Probably should just exercise the last ones at $15, but I wasn't thinking. Okay. Heiko asks, what would probably happen when the SEC steps in and suspends the dark pools? I think we will see prices on a whole bunch of stocks shoot through the roof, and prices on a bunch of other stocks collapse entirely. The dark pools are being used to manipulate the supply and demand curve. Someone was asking about the CAT system. Was it yesterday? So the old school system was someone would be yelling, I want to buy this stock at this price on the floor, and it was just chaos. And someone else, I'll accept your price, and they write it down and they report their computers, and the price goes in the system as the latest price. Now, because everything's electronic, the CAT system, which was developed for like the Toronto Exchange originally, takes basically bids and averages them and gives the price for that stock. Well, they can't do that if the dark pool system is not connected to the rest of the stock exchange. And so the number of actual bids that are being put out there aren't represented because only this many are. So they can't actually average out to give the factual price of the stock. I think if they ban high frequency trading in these dark pools and force them to go into the exchange, we will see a whole bunch of price action on these meme stocks especially. Okay. Um, let's go to 2 o'clock. We'll go a little bit longer today. I'll go to 2 o'clock since we had so many technical issues, and I'll just make my obligations disappear for a second. All right. Eric D, what do you think of IEX spreads of GME ask at $5,000? I don't know enough about IEX spreads. I'll have to put that on the list of things to look at. These are spreads like offered by the IEX exchange. I take it. IEX, 5,000 GME. Written down. I'll have to look at that. The IEX exchange is kind of this weird nebulous thing, and they're currently being sued along with GameStop and others for the stuff that happened on January 28th. The IEX is this exchange that's only open to financial institutions that pay to join, and it's a way of them trading stock in the dark pools. I don't know. I'll have to see what the spread's all about, what they're doing with that. So, Eric D, I've got to look into that. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you at the moment. Or an opinion, for that matter. Okay. Peter Smith says, do you believe it's in the best interest of those on the board of directors for all these shorted companies not to squeeze, rather live in a perpetual state of hype to keep the stock prices up? I don't know. That, if that gets them to meet certain stock price guarantees for their bonuses, yeah, I mean their market value long term over several quarters allows them to raise more capital and pay off debts and do things like that. Also gives them access to better credit ratings. Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question, Peter Smith. I do think that eventually, for a lot of these companies, like AMC, so many retail investors own the company that they're going to have to do something about it. Get the squeeze to happen to make their shareholders happy, because the shareholders have so much power, they can get rid of the board at any time they want. And that's something I think they have to keep in the back of their head. And I think that's something that Adam Aaron quickly realized in the last month. He's like, wait a minute. If I don't start listening to some of these apes and actually doing things that benefit them, they can get rid of me. So I think that's kind of where his thinking is at. So, yeah. Wheat Wild, Houston Wade, maybe instead of HYG, August 13th, $87 puts, I'll try August 6th, $85 puts. Much cheaper if the market crash, which it will probably won't. A rise from 5 cents to 50 will be easier than 33 cents to $3. Yeah, I mean, that's the gamble you're taking. I mean, if by Saturday at midnight, Congress does not extend the debt ceiling, so that by trading Monday we have not extended the debt ceiling, the entire market is going to just shit the bed. So HYG puts for August 6th would totally pan out. That sucker will just take a dive with everything else. But that means we're betting on Congress to not pass the debt ceiling, which is something they haven't done before. They came close in 2011 and affected our credit rating and really messed with the market for a little bit. But that's, we have to bet on these politicians to really fuck over the entire globe as well as themselves. I mean, if they campaign on, well, I didn't pass the debt ceiling, and it turns out it crashes the entire global economy, then they're going to lose. So I think all they do is they posture and say, we shouldn't have debt spending, and then they eventually just vote for it anyway. That seems to be what happens every time this cycle's around. But if they don't raise the debt ceiling or suspend it, then the economy's crashing next week. That's just how it's going to happen. Stonk Mom 67. You're a pool of knowledge, Houston. We appreciate you. Well, thank you, Stonk Mom 67. I appreciate that so much. I'm a pool of knowledge for some things, and other things I can't figure out for the life of me how to make them work. Such as, I don't know how to make the chats appear on the screen. I have no idea how that happens. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'd love to get the chats on the screen so you folks can read the questions with me while I talk about this stuff. And also there's apparently a way that I can do like live closed captioning for people that are hard of hearing. I want to be able to do that too, but I haven't mastered that system yet. J-Dog, can Bitcoin really hit 4.5 million a coin by 2030? I mean, it went from $1 to $67,000 in what, 8 years, 6 years? No, 12 years. Sorry. So yeah, it can do it. Why not? Diamond Hands asks, hey Houston, does chart analysis really work even though the market is not fair? I'm not a chart analysis person. One thing I see when people deal with numbers is that human beings see patterns and stuff too easily. That MathMind book, I wish I could find that book. Is it up here? I'm going to look for it on my shelf. One sec. See if the MathMind book is up there, because it might be in the other room. Those are baseball. Those are those. Which bookshelf do I have the Mathematical Brain book? Which bookshelf is it? Which one is it? MathMind? I don't think it's in this room. I may have given it to somebody. Nuts. Well, the Math Brain book isn't in this room. It might be in the other room. But they talk about, human beings' penchant to see patterns where they're not necessarily patterns. And I think right now doing stock analysis of these manipulated stocks, or chart analysis of manipulated stocks, is difficult because those stocks are being manipulated. They're causing the charts to do certain things by routing trades to dark pools, by shorting the stock incredibly. So I'm not sure how accurate those charts are, but I'm not a chart guy. So I just kind of, I have my passing knowledge of cup and handle and pennant breakouts and, those things, Elliott waves. I leave that up to other people to do that chart stuff. I'm going to have to find that book for you. It's a great book, the Mathematical Brain or whatever it's called by NPR's math guy. What did I do with that thing? It's probably in the other room. So, yeah, we see patterns where patterns aren't. And that's like numerology, a lot of conspiracy theories get found out of this stuff. Astrology, see patterns where there really aren't patterns. And that's just our nature. For having such mathematical brains, we sometimes see a whole bunch of things that aren't there as a result. And that's how I feel about some chart analysis, especially while the stock is being manipulated. Okay. Ricky Ray says, you surprised at how long they've been able to kick the can down the road? I am. I thought that the foot was going to get put down months ago, and I think everyone's hesitancy to rip that Band-Aid has made the problem worse at this point, especially since AMC went from $8 to $70 at its peak just a month and change ago. So that just dug a much bigger hole for a lot of folks. Deck P. How do the hedges get stocks to trade sideways for weeks on end? Dark pools, my man. They naked short through dark pools, so they generate more stock than there is demand, and they route them through the dark pools off the exchange and keep that buy pressure down, the apparent buy pressure down. And so we end up buying a whole bunch of stock in the dip that never gets reported to the main exchanges. And so the prices are never reflecting the actual demand for the stock. So that's what they're doing. And they're doing it again and again and again and again. And all they're doing is generating more and more of these naked shares. And as they generate more of these naked shares, they're technically digging the hole bigger, but they're getting away with it right now because no one's forcing them to close their positions. And the SEC and the federal government need to come up with a law that basically outlaws naked shorting of all kind. That if you don't have the asset in hand, you cannot sell it. So you must borrow ahead of time. You can't naked short and promise to get it later. They need to make a law that says you must have the asset in hand before you can do any sort of selling with it, and get rid of this market maker loophole that's allowing all this naked shorting. Boom. Whoops. San, what are the real odds of them not extending the debt ceiling? I'm from the UK. I don't know much about U.S. politics. I think it will be a really, really close vote. When a Democratic president is in office, Republicans will talk a lot about debt and how irresponsible debt is. When a Republican's in office, they won't mention it at all, and the debt will go up, no problem. The debt always seems to increase more under Republican presidents than it does under Democratic presidents. And a large part of that is because Republicans demand cuts while a Democratic president is in office. And so they may use the next few days threats to not extend the debt ceiling to get concessions for budget cuts later on. That's kind of what they do. I don't think when it comes down to it, enough Republicans are suicidal enough to not extend the debt ceiling. They all know deep down exactly what the ramifications of that would be, that it would collapse the entire bond market and thus the entire global economy, because so much investment and assets are dependent upon holding those treasury bonds. Pensions hold them. Municipal governments hold them. People's 401ks, mutual funds, big financial institutions, hedge funds, banks, Federal Reserve, foreign sovereign wealth funds, foreign companies. There's so many people, so many people and dependent upon the value of those bonds remaining steadfast and rock solid, that by not extending the debt ceiling and the United States government defaulting on interest payments on that debt will collapse the price of those things, and it would ruin everything. It would make the tulip crash look like child's play. It will make 2008 look like a toddler playing in a sandbox. The 1929 crash probably wouldn't compare to the absolute collapse of U.S. Treasuries. So I don't think the odds are super high that they won't pass the debt ceiling, but I wouldn't say it's non-zero. There is a fraction of a chance that it doesn't get passed, and Monday we see all hell break loose. But I don't think the odds are high. I think they will pass it. They always do. They always have, and no one's been dumb enough to challenge that yet. As Daly's saying, could hedge funds take advantage of the debt ceiling not being raised with shorting, therefore giving them leverage against us? I would say yes, but so much of the assets under management of these hedge funds are bonds that if the debt ceiling doesn't pass, their assets vanish, and then they're forced to buy all of our shit. So it's a two-edged sword that they're dealing with there. So I don't think so. Yeah. Alex Forget says, I could see a future where Congress is too incompetent to come together and increase the debt ceiling. I mean, that future, I think, gets closer each time that vote comes. We always seem to have a few Looney Tunes in there that that just harp and harp and harp on the debt ceiling thing. I mean, the debt, federal debt isn't as bad as people want to make it out to be. It isn't. Your Social Security dollars own a huge chunk of that debt. And the interest payments on that debt is what pays old people to not have to eat cat food and live in a cardboard box. So, people are like, oh, China's buying the United States of America. Yeah, China holds some of our foreign debt. So does Great Britain. So does France. So does Japan. So does Canada. So does Mexico. All these nations own little pieces of our debt, but most of it is held by U.S. financial institutions and the American people themselves via the Social Security Administration. So that I just hope they don't fuck this up. But debt isn't as bad as people make it out to be when you're government. Inflation's constant, and if the interest rate is below inflation, you're basically getting free money when you sell those bonds. The government sells the bonds at 1% interest and inflation's going at 3% interest. Then as the value of the dollar changes, the actual burden of that debt seems to shrink over time. So there's no need to be as militant about government debt as people seem to be. There are economists that talk about this all the time that are much better at explaining this than I am. But you can search for articles about economists like, who cares about government debt? if you are the global standard for the economy, who cares about your debt? It's when you're a small nation that you don't have a standardized currency that is a global powerhouse, you have to worry about it then. But if you're the big dog, who cares? And as long as we do things to remain the big dog, that won't matter. It's the minute we stop doing those things to remain the big dog that then we'll be screwed. Then we'll be a completely fallen empire. Okay. Alexander Holland asks, hey Houston, greetings from Germany. Do you know how the liquidation of defaulting parties in the row with hedge funds, brokers, banks, DTCC with the new rules in place will work? Simple way to explain it is the hedge fund trades on margin, and that margin is always much bigger than actual assets under management. So they're taking out loans and making bets that they can trade a whole bunch of stuff and pay back those loans, and they're using their assets under management as a guarantee to pay back one of those bets. The system operates on the assumption that the hedge funds will not risk all this margin and chance losing their entire assets under management to cover that, because they're not supposing that everything can go wrong at once. They're supposing that this one might fail and then we got to cover a little bit here, but then we'll win it back later because this bet will pay off. But right now, so much of that margin are bad bets that are toxic for them. They're toxic. They're toxic bets, and they're putting their assets at risk. So if that toxic margin is large enough, and they get margin called, meaning they got to pony up a bunch of cash to add to their assets, and so that the prime broker or bank doesn't go, oh my God, I'm gonna have to sell everything you own and pay for this bad bet. If those obligations in that margin are so toxic and so large, and the hedge fund can't meet the new requirements for liquidity or assets, then the prime broker and the banks have to liquidate them. And the new SFT rules, 803 and 010, those are for basically liquidating these hedge funds under the guise of giving them a loan. But it forces them to transfer those assets into the account of the lender, who will then give them cash that will immediately go to us to pay for our stocks that they have to buy. But that will only cover 1/30 of their margin. So the other 29 times of their total margin will then have to be covered by the banks. But the banks just gave them a bunch of cash for that loan to claim their assets. So the banks will get drained really quickly too if those toxic assets are too great. And once the banks are drained, Then it goes to the insurance of the clearinghouse itself. And that won't take too long for the clearinghouse to get drained because they've walled off a whole bunch of their members. Before, their members were all responsible for paying out that insurance. And now a whole bunch of members are like, dude, I am not going to pay for that guy's bad bets if it's going to mean I go bankrupt. And so they've changed rules to reduce the obligation of those other participants in their clearinghouse. So once the banks are drained, the clearinghouse is doing and buying as much as they can. The Federal Reserve then does its whole quantitative easing thing and essentially dumps a bunch of money into the accounts of the banks so that they've got cash on hand, and then the banks will probably take over buying again with that money. And that cycle will just continue until the obligations are all done, the books are cleared, and that's where we are. I think it's going to be a pretty complicated process when it kicks into gear. And there may be days or hours where no one has money and they're waiting for the Federal Reserve to approve dumping cash into accounts so that the buying can continue. So we'll probably see a whole bunch of ups and downs during that squeeze as a result. Okay. Hope, Alexander, that answered your question there for you. Moose sent a super chat. Thank you so much, Moose. I greatly appreciate it. I got a couple minutes left here. Sorry for the short show today that was plagued by technical issues. But yeah. Let's see if I can get if I can find one real good question in here. So Wheat Wild asks, question: if I buy January 22nd $100 calls on XYZ while the stock is $60, and November's the stock does a 1-to-4 split, so the price drops $15, what happens to my options? I believe your options also split. So those $100 call options splits and drops down to $25 call options and 400 shares inside that. So you get basically 4 calls, I believe. I was asking that question. That's the answer I was getting from people who have had calls when splits like that happen. So we're going to see an 8-to-1 reverse stock split for General Electric here soon. And so if you have 8 shares of General Electric, it'll become 1 share worth 8 times what the current share is. The QSIP will change, and I guess we'll see with that what happens. Sheepducking Cow sent in a super chat here. Thank you, Sheepducking Cow. I think dark pools have been suspended in the past, but having trouble locking down rates. Any insight? No. I don't. I would be curious to see. I'll have to research which ones have been shut down. I don't know. Yeah. If the dark pools lead to a whole bunch of either failure to delivers or does payment for order flows cause in suspended trades that last a long time, they can get fined a whole bunch. This time last year, out of 500 and something trades, the federal government saw that Citadel had delayed the orders of their clients through this payment for order flow system by like weeks, and it resulted in Citadel making billions of dollars, and the fine was only like $700,000. So the punishment for this stuff needs to be significant. I mean, if I steal $1,000 from someone, I'm going to go to prison. That's a felony, and I have to pay restitution equivalent to what I stole, and then some to the victim. Why, when a financial institution steals billions of dollars, is their financial pain a couple $1,000 and they don't ever see prison time? The white collar crime goes unpunished so much in this country that the fines and punishment is just the cost of doing business. I mean, hell, police take more money in asset seizures for people that don't commit crime, that haven't been convicted of crime, than there is burglary. White collar crime in general outstrips that of every type of property crime there is. Wage theft by employers dwarfs that of any actual criminal enterprise resulting in property crime, theft, burglary, you name it. And the laws are set up so that the average people get absolutely just boned time and again by the big dogs, because the big dogs write the rules. And the big dogs are like, oh yeah, we'll do some lip service to some sort of fine, whatever. I'll pay $700,000 even though I made $4 billion on this deal. And then, the small time white collar criminals, those ones get held up as examples of don't do that, folks. But it's never the big guys who are doing exactly the same thing. So yeah, I want to see the dark pools not just get suspended, but just ended entirely. I don't think there should be any ability to trade stock outside of the exchange. It should always be represented, because that's what it's for. That's where the market's done. That's where the free market is. Do that. Yeah. So that's my spiel on that. Okay. I'm going to do a longer show tomorrow. I'll probably come on at noon tomorrow and do noon to about 2:30 or so, maybe 2:15. I have lunch with somebody I've got to do that's from out of town in the afternoon. So I'll see you guys tomorrow at noon Pacific time. And thank you so much for jumping in today. Sorry about the technical issues. I'm glad that my internet finally started working again halfway through. Enjoy your day. Have a great one. Find some fruit on the side of the road and eat it. Okay, bye.